Is he in the background?
I can now hear you guys.
Great.
Yes. Hi. Good afternoon, Dr. James. Thank
Yes.
you so much for joining us on State of Affairs.
Welcome, sir. Welcome, Dr. James.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Yes, Dr. James, let's get right into it. Of
Mhm.
course, we would like to start off in Tobago. The landslide victory, TPP 15, PNM 0. Dr. James, what does this mean for Trinidad and Tobago? What exactly led to such a significant mandate? You being a Tobagonian born, what does this mean? Can you shed some light that Tobagonians believe that TPP, led by Farley Chavez or Augustine, they believe that he is the person that can take them where they would like to be?
You appreciate that that's a multifaceted question,
Yes, I appreciate it.
right? Because Tobago's displeasure with the PNM started before January 12th. It started before December 21 last year. It started before um, Robinson departed these shores. This thing went back to at least 1976, when Robinson won the two Tobago seats. Do you remember that guy? Right? 1996? 19, sorry, what did I say to you? 1976. Right?
1976.
The Robinson broke away. He had broken away from the PNM before the election. He did set up the DSC and he contested the election through those two seats, Tobago West and Tobago East, and won. And of course, what he did was to fuel the anger of the father of the nation. Eric Williams was extremely annoyed that Robinson could leave the PNM and set up his own party and win. And one of the punishments that Williams used against the Tobago electorate was the dismantling of the Tobago Ministry of Tobago Affairs. You guys remember that? Because the young people or younger people are not being taught these things, and they are going to be in abeyance for a long time if nobody intervenes to revise the curriculum to have some recency of political developments that the younger people should be aware of. So if we go back, we can go back before that too, but if we go back to 1976, we see that Tobago began hardening its attitude towards the PNM. We can skip a few years and come down to 1980 when the Tobago House of Assembly Act was renewed, right? 1930, Act 37 of 1980, right? That happened. Robinson became, um, well, he joined up with the UNC. What was the name of the UNC before that? I can't. ULF, yes. He joined up with the ULF, and he, in fact, was responsible for installing Basio Pandey into office. Now, there are some details I might be mixing up, but I am trying to suggest to you that Tobago, even though quite a few people were voting for PNM, they were not voting for PNM with majorities, except when Shamfa Kodjo and Ayana Roy Webster came and won the two seats recently. When Rowley was in charge from 20. Rowley was in charge from 2015, right? 2015, yes. And you notice that they went back into power with Rowley, but Rowley's days were cut short by um, the PDP, that later became the TPP. But Rowley led even though he remained in power until he tried to foist Stuart Young on the population. Not only the population in Trinidad, by the way, the population in Trinidad and Tobago as well. So there was an attempt to foist um, people that were not approved of by the electorate, and well, his party lost by an avalanche. Huh? They lost badly, and it lost again. It lost by an avalanche in the 2024 parliamentary elections, right? And it lost again um, in Tobago House of Assembly elections. People found that the PNM no longer had anything to give, that they were corrupt. They were corrupt in many, many ways, that the leadership was self-seeking. Oh, that there are so many things to say. I don't want to overspeak, but the data is there. But of course, it would not be fair of me to only relate to those factors that I think are responsible. There are other things that are responsible, chief among them, the behavior of the price of oil and gas. Um, that has defeated almost all the governments of that Trinidad and Tobago has had, right? Um, so the price of oil kept depreciating, kept going down, right? And the governments that lost as a result of the low price of oil could not use any other device to keep people attracted to the PNM. And we have seen that when this new government of the UNC came into power, that in fact, the PNM, every single one of them in government, the PNM was using contracts, was availing themselves of contracts while their salaries were big. They were giving the public service 4%, right? Increase when their salaries were already large, right? And it's not as if they were bound to go with the recommendations of the Salaries Review Commission. They didn't have to. But they were demonstrating that the hierarchy, the top echelons of the hierarchy, were far more interested in feathering their nests. Yes? Now, I said these things not recently. I'm not saying it to them for the first time today. So it's not as if I'm taking the opportunity to blast the PNM. We were saying these things before April 28 happened. We were saying that, right? We were seeing people higher up in the hierarchy feathering their nest and so on, whilst the humble foot soldiers of the PNM were suffering very badly. Good? And Rowley did not see the kind of authority that the PNM in Tobago needed to have in order for them to have the respect, right, and the love, right, and the acceptance of the electorate in Tobago, right? So I am blaming Rowley a lot for a lot of what has happened, by the way. Yes? I don't think he can escape. And now he's trying to hold conversations with the public. Yes? After his palpable mistakes as a politician, he's trying now to attract people by inviting them to conversations, and of course, nobody taking him on. I mean, hardly anybody is taking him on. There will always be loyalists in any cause. But the point is, he's not. His conversations are not attracting they're not attracting the audience that he expected. Right. So that's a mouthful there, fellows.
Indeed.
Dr. Dr. James, I know all too well that you would definitely have no pleasure speaking these ills of the PNM because in the lead up to the 2015 general election, I think you would have explicitly uh, wrote about why he should be given a chance. And also, I would have followed that during the last regime led by the former Prime Minister, you was constantly writing and indicating that there is some form of hubris that
Yeah.
has taken, yeah, that has taken place. So I have extensively followed your work.
Okay.
So
And the
so
record is there.
yes, that's right. So I know too well that you will definitely, this is not a joy for you, but you call the facts as it is.
Right.
Dr. Dr. James, what we have seen is that the former Prime Minister, who is also a Tobagoan born, um, he is even unable to whip up support for even one seat. And this should also indicate how dissatisfied Togolese were that a former prime minister who is a Togolese is not even able to tell people, to convince people that to be able to give the PNM a chance. But how did it reach here? Why?
Well, I mean, how many chances do the PNM want? The PNM has had the most chances of any political party this country has ever had. Yes? And we are going back to 1956 or somewhere about there. Yeah? They started there. And they were the ones in charge. They were the ones in Trinidad, they were the ones in Tobago, and they were the ones in charge of the whole country. If you divide up the country as I have just done there, then you realize that PNM has had these opportunities for a long, long time. And they have gone with these opportunities, as I said, until they went with these opportunities until Robinson left. He was a PNM man, by the way. When he left the PNM and went out on his own politics of autonomy, he's the guy, nationalism. Those forces were still in the island, but the point is he put them together and galvanized the population, especially Tobago East, around those ideas that Tobago is not getting enough. He's the guy who talked to us, the whole country, and said, look, Tobago has oil and gas. He was the guy who was promoting that sort of thing. So, and the PNM could not match his politics because there was no conviction. Not even when Orville London appropriated the politics of the DSC, the TOP, and so on. That's what Orwell did. He took over that political narrative, right, and came up actually with bills, autonomy bills, that began to look attractive. And I don't know what PNM did not do with a bill that was so promising. Came out, I think, in 2016, 2017. But they could not give Tobago what Tobago was seeking based on what the contents of that bill was. But the point is, Orville was in charge. Remember, Orville went for 4 terms? Anybody remembers that? Um, Orville started in 1976, I think, too. And then, 2020 is when he demitted office, so to speak, political office. Um, he was in Orville was he enjoyed 4 terms, and we are still at the end of those 4 terms. We are still without the kind of autonomy that we Tobagonians have wanted. Now, Farley has a challenge there, because
But Dr. James, what is stopping this
what
government
is
in Trinidad and the vast majority that Farley has worked hard for and gained? What is stopping them from getting that bill cracking now?
well, there are several things, but that's a great question. So let's chat about it a little bit now, right? So, Farley, throughout his first term, was talking about autonomy. He even set up um, a council to gather information that would inform. the understandings of people, right? Um, with respect to the kind of autonomy, because there are different kinds of autonomy. You remember that there was a bill that failed in the parliament, but parts of which were already presented to the Tobagonian electorate. And one of the
UNC did not support.
attractive, huh?
The UNC did not support at that time.
No, did not. And I believe they did not because they had conversations with the Tobago elements,
Right. No
right?
problem.
Right. So the UNC did not want to lose a potential ally. Yeah. And Rowley was there saying, well, look, we're going to give you, we're going to give it, but we are giving it in all terms. Um, as on his terms. I was in the chamber when they were discussing it, and I was telling myself, my God, apart from Rowley, there were no other Tobagonians there, not even Shamfa. I don't think Shamfa and Ayana were present at the time, but if they were, well, I will ask their forgiveness up front. But the point I'm making here is that they could not get the UNC to join with them because the UNC were told or had been told beforehand that that bill was not sufficient. But one of the attractive points about that bill was that they were offering for the next budget in Tobago, they were offering 8% of the national budget.
So why did they accept it at the time and work to win the election and win it now and improve the bill? So
Well,
the
that's a
people
good
Tobago
question.
would have benefited from the 8%.
Well, I don't know. Maybe that might have changed their minds. But yes, that's a good question. I can answer it because I might have been as practical as you are.
Right.
I am going to take the 8, right? And
Yes.
I'm going to
Win the next
see,
election.
yes, see what they're going to do when that happens. Because that 8% could not win over anybody, you know. They could give them power, but you could not win their hearts, if you follow me, because that is not what autonomy is about.
But
Where you
Dr.
pick.
James, there is a school of thought
Mm,
that no government is going to give Tobago autonomy.
yeah,
Businessmen have told me that.
yeah. But it's going to be hard, but it's going to be rough on the person on whom it's going to be the roughest is Farley. I don't think Farley can survive another political term if he does not get the kind
Autonomy.
of autonomy that we are talking about.
Because the
But we
PNM
will
gave it
read.
to him and his partners or his friends or whatever did
Yes.
not support it and he was getting 8% at the
Well,
budget.
wouldn't that be an interesting state of affairs?
Of course it
Because
will.
he's talking now about, and I don't know how long he's going to, but he's talking about two things, you know. He's talking at least two things. What he's saying is that we want something called constitutional autonomy. And I interpret that to mean an autonomy that is embedded in the law, right? So that regardless of what happens, you can't remove it except through a constitutional motion. And that is not the easiest thing to have,
No.
as you must know. Right? You agree with that?
Yeah, because that needs opposition support, not so?
It needs, but to get constitutional change, I think you have to have a four
For fifth
fifths
majority. And that
majority.
way you have to depend on votes from the other side.
Well, right now, no, the UNC doesn't have that.
But that's what
The
I'm
UNC
telling you.
does,
They will have to get votes from the PNM.
right. So the PNM now is going to be put in another hotspot. Are they going to turn that down? After the way that they have been rejected, they have to become friendly again. They have to become supportive again. But that's me speculating. We have to see the actual frame of the law that they have in mind. But there is the 8% that we were talking about a while ago is not part of the constitutional autonomy that we are talking. We are suggesting no. You could give me 20%, but don't give me autonomy. You give me a lot of money to run the affairs of the island, and I take it and I run the island to the best of my ability. But that doesn't give me the kind of governance structure that puts me in charge, that enables me to run the island according to my lights. That's one of the stories that we have there.
Yeah, but
Another, yeah, you
8%,
wanted to say
Dr. James,
something, yeah?
8% of our budget to divide up among 60,000 people, a lot of people will be impacted by that level of financing. Because right
Yeah.
now they are getting almost $4 billion. Let's say, I don't know the exact figures, but let's say around $4 billion per annum from the budget. And people in Tobago don't really live hand to mouth.
No, because we have been very frugal
Yes.
as a result of the position we have been in.
But people in
Right?
Tobago are not poor by any
No,
means.
no. If you go there,
They are very
you,
frugal, as you
I'm
said.
sure
Everybody
you,
has goats
I'm sure
minding.
you love that little island. Yeah. So people have taken their monies and have put it to good use.
That's right.
Yes. So there is a kind of frugality. Maybe that's not the best word, but a kind of economics that people have been engaged in, especially people up in the east. Although, of course, most of the tourism money um, is spent on Tobago West. In fact, lots
In the
of people from
East.
Tobago East come down to Tobago West to enjoy a standard of living that enables them to send their children to university and to higher learning and so on. Yeah? So even though you may say from your own observation that Tobago has been this way, you are talking about the material circumstances.
Yes.
It's more than material circumstances.
Okay.
It is the question of how you, for example, if you want to take up policing, for example, how you do that in an island like Tobago. That is not materiality that we are talking about here. We are talking about protection, security, and you have other matters related to what I just said there. You have, for example, Tobago needing to have the license for Studley Park aggregate from the Prime Minister. Now, Rowley was there and he didn't allow it. But Kamala came and in a few weeks, that thing was ready. That kind of control. The question of how you manage your land and building and so on. What do you call it? Town and country planning. Town and country planning.
That's
Although
kind of archaic.
Tobago is supposed to be in charge of town and country planning, but Orville gave it back to the central government. Could you believe that? Gave it back. So everything you want to do with respect town and country planning, you have to appeal to Trinidad. Even the question of the EMA, you have to appeal to Trinidad. Now, that's the kind of government we are talking. Who should be in charge of that? Why would you want to come and tell me how to distribute my land? Am I incapable? And then when you go to Trinidad, you find some little clerk, not necessarily on this point, is the one giving the approval. You follow what I'm saying? And we know, that's one thing with Togolans, they know the issues. They know the issues. We may not all agree on the fine points, but we know the big points that we want. So I am saying here, Tobagonians should be lauded for having housing plant that is perhaps superior in many parts than what it is in many parts of Trinidad. And I'm thinking here, folks, of the East-West Corridor.
Yes.
East-West Corridor has some um, shack-like kinds of living quarters, and the
A lot of
people.
squatting, illegal squatting.
Well, yes, that's part of it. But the ambition is not there to own proper housing. At least it doesn't seem so to me, right? The Tobagoans who leave Tobago and come down to Trinidad and build far better housing than the Trinidadians themselves. And the Trinidadians that are represented by people like Rowley and other people in the PNM tribe. So, yes, money is important.
As the Prime Minister says, a lot of lawlessness.
Well, yes, although she did not develop the point. Um, it's lawlessness not because of what we think she's saying. What she seems to be saying is that we don't maintain our physical environment or personal environment. We don't have any sense of pride with respect to how those things are maintained. And I suppose you could have a distinction between some Trinidadians and Tobagonians now in relation to how their housing quarters, their living quarters are kept and organized. Yes? So I think she was talking about that. But that's part of the idea of the dump. Um, I have seen, I see it regularly, people passing along the roadways and they're obviously eating in the car, and then when they finish, they just pitch it outside the window.
Yeah, that is madness.
Now, clearly, no, we don't have that culture. We will keep it in the car. Now, I'm not saying Tobagonians are perfect. There are some, of course, who misbehave. But we've been taught to keep surroundings clean.
Clean, green, and serene.
Yes, we have been taught. And then we know that people are going to come to our
And this
place
is, yeah.
and they're going to make judgments as they try to sample some of the offerings that we have. Yeah? Um, and so it's a dump in that sense. Now, you expected, at least I expected, when Kamala talks like that, we must give her proof that that is not the case. But nobody is giving her proof that they, first of all, recognize that the place is a dumpy kind of place, and two, that they have been taking steps to clean up the place and to make it attractive and so on.
Dr.
And
James,
to
I
give,
can tell you,
huh?
I
Sorry?
can tell you, you see that statement that you say people are lawless, and you and I have been discussing it. It is factual and actual, right?
Yes, yes, yes. You mean what? You mean
Yeah,
the
when they
idea of
dump
the thing?
indiscriminately.
Yes, yes,
Some of
yes,
these
yes.
coconut vendors, they after they sell the coconut, they go and they throw it. You all
Yes.
in Tobago don't have the problem. When people from Trinidad was coming up
That's the
and
point.
selling. And when they do so, they started to dump the police and they had to stop them. Because they were leaving Trinidad and coming to sell on the highways and byways in Tobago. And afterwards, they were going to dump stuff all around Tobago. And it was
No, we can't have that.
you understand? And
Can't have
that is
that.
what they practice in Trinidad here. That is lawlessness.
Well,
And
so she's right, but she
yes,
has not been, shall we
the
say,
way she put it over probably came off a little rough.
and she
But
has not
the
kept it
context in
in.
what she was saying is correct.
Seems to me that you have to keep at this sort of thing, yet environmental upkeep. You need to do that. I'm not talking about the CPEP and UTEP type, you know.
No, no,
That
no.
although I know that
Citizens.
when they clean the place, it looks nicer.
Yes,
That I know that for sure. I am talking about what mommy taught you. What
that's
is
right.
it? What mommy taught me? Mommy taught me that I'm not supposed to do that. And it's not as if my circumstances were superior to the circumstances of other people in Trinidad. Because I know, you must know that a lot of Tobagonians came down to Trinidad at the turn of the 19th century and went down to Point Fortin and Cedros and made a living there from the oil industry. You know about
Yes.
that, right? And there are people who come down here and take up menial positions, right, in order to survive. And of course, things that the fact that you have small salaries does not mean you cannot be neat. The
True.
fact, it doesn't mean that you cannot be clean. There's no way. And if your mother taught you that, there's no way you can just forget how that is done because this society is going to shame you. No, I'm not saying, as again, I'm not saying that the island is perfect, but I think there are some standards that can be copied. Yeah?
That's right.
And certainly that should be passed on to our children and our grandchildren, especially the grandchildren. You have grandchildren, sir?
No, sir.
I have two, so I know. So there's a lot to say about the kind of autonomy that Tobago needs. And I want to remind you that in Schedule 5, I think it's Schedule 5 of the Constitution of the Tobago House of Assembly Act, Tobago's areas of responsibility are laid out. They're laid out, but Tobago has not been able to implement some of the things that are there in Schedule 5. That's what we are talking about. We want to be in charge of tongue and country. We want to be in charge of wharves. Wharves are a part of of what Tobago was promised. In fact, I want to say this, and although I don't have the evidence, the information in front of me right now, but the current House of Assembly Act has stuff that has not been implemented. Has not been. Nobody seems to have taken the time to identify those areas that have not been properly represented in the way we run government in Trinidad and Tobago. And I'm hoping that in the conversation that is coming, that those areas will be identified, especially if you're talking about constitutional autonomy.